Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining this session, a journey towards halving inventory holding costs and freeing up significant working capital for one of Africa's leading telecom companies. I'm so happy that you have attended the SAPEX conference, and I'd like to introduce our two speakers. Karen Goosen is passionate about delivering results. By now, she's accepted that she's a specialist generalist and has worked in many industries with various challenges. John Anderson is a senior manager at Transnova, specializing in leading business process optimization projects in various sectors, as well as operating model design and implementation. I'm going to hand over to the two of them now. This is just a reminder that there will be a poll question after slide 3. John will prompt you, and a reminder to just click on the poll button on the right-hand side and submit your answer. And then also at the end of the session to please give some feedback on the session. Just a reminder that all the sessions are recorded, so you will be able to watch it again later. Thanks very much. Over to John and Karen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
John, just
share you there
screen again, please. John, you'll just need to share your screen again, please. Perfect. You can begin.
All right. Thank you for the intro, Claire. So we were just getting accustomed to this exciting new way of doing conferences. I think it's incredible for considering the environment that we find ourselves in. So yes, welcome everyone. Thanks for having us. And we will be going through a journey towards halving inventory and freeing up significant working capital for one of Africa's leading telecoms. So, as we get into the detail of this presentation, we will explain that we managed to achieve significant inventory reductions over basically one financial year. And what I'm sure you will gather from this slide is the key message we want to get across is that there was no silver bullet. Rather, a combination of root cause analysis, focused improvement, a culture of continuous improvement, embracing digitization, implementing SCM best practices, top-down alignment throughout the group, and a huge focus on change management. So the agenda we'll go through is we're going to go through the problem statements and the background and context to understand how it is that we found ourselves in this position at this problem statement, and also to give the entire audience a bit of background on the complexities of obviously telcos in the booming industry it's been in for the last 20 years, and particularly the type of inventory, network inventory that we've been managing, where Karen will give more insights into that. Then we will look at the high level journey of the working capital reduction, and then we'll go into detail on the multiple pieces of the solution and how they all tie together. Our speakers, so it will be myself, John Anderson from Transnova, and Karen Goosen from Vodacom Group. And on that, over to you, Karen, to take everyone through the background and context.
Thanks, John. Good morning, everyone. I think firstly, it's important to say that today we are dealing with the network side of things. It's not about the flashy cell phone side of the business. Rather, we'll focus on everything that we need at a cell phone tower to make your cell phone work. The radios, transmissions, battery, etc., the network equipment. So what was the problem at hand that we needed to solve for, and what made it complex? The problem in its simplest form was one that has been solved many times before. It was a basic supply and demand problem where the demand didn't match the supply, thus resulting in excess inventory, aged equipment, and also having stockouts of the important items that we do need. You might ask, Karen, we've solved for this many times before. This is basics. Why is it still a problem today? To answer that question, let me explain the background and context of the environment we were operating in. Firstly, telecoms is a rather new industry. It took off in '94 in our country at the dawn of democracy with a handful of users on the network. Today, that has exponentially grown to millions of subscribers. Added to that exponential growth is the complexity of the ever-changing technologies. 2G, 3G, 4G, and now 5G, all whilst maintaining backward compatibility of the technologies. Systems and processes had to keep up with this exponential growth to enable the day-to-day business at hand, and it resulted in some systems, processes, and departments growing substantially but in isolation from each other, disconnected from the whole. This meant that for this particular case at hand, the first views we had of centralized network inventory holding only came about in 2017. Thus, only from 2017 we could start understanding our inventory holding. Basics, like what is our total inventory on hand, which items were the fast movers, slow movers, and later on, which items were in excess and has also aged. From here, though, it was also not obvious what the inventory holding should be. What is the right amount of equipment to have? What was the target? At the end of 2018, a centralized warehousing and distribution hub was established from which it was much easier to exercise control over the various provincial warehouses. To understand the demand side of the business, building our network towers do not follow similar demand rules than FMCG or retail would. It is a project-based environment, which means the demand patterns are quite variable and not prone to repeating. The network project planning views were and still are disconnected from our inventory views, and as such, normal material requirements planning softwares wouldn't solve the problem at hand. The procurement of network equipment was also a disjointed process. The process happened in isolation to what was already available in our warehouses, and the equipment typically all arrived in our warehouses at the same time. This problem thus stretched over departments, systems, people, and processes. Fast forward to 2020, and we had a DC full of network equipment and faced the problem of excess, aged, and the wrong mix of equipment. John is going to take you through the high-level journey that we took, but before that, we thought it would be great to get the audience perspectives on a quick poll. In your business experience, which of the below business fundamentals has had the greatest impact in delivering improvement or step change initiatives? Technology, processes, or people? So I think if you navigate to the right-hand side, you'll see there's a poll button. If you click on it, you can select which one of those three you think gives the biggest improvement in step change initiatives.
Great, thank you, Karen. So hopefully everyone manages to navigate the poll all right, and then you'll see it links to a lot of what we're going to talk about now. But overall, this slide over here depicts the entire working capital journey that we went on. So it was launched in March 2020, during the days when we were getting our first few cases of COVID-19. So this entire journey has obviously taken place during very trying times. But I think as to what I guess Bruce was saying earlier, a lot of companies have managed to thrive during this time. And I think this initiative that we drove during these remote working times just says what can be done. So basically, the axis on the left here shows we started with 100% inventory, so we don't have values yet, just the percentages. And over the year, through sustainable change, which we'll get into detail here, we dropped it down to about 53%, resulting in a complete inventory reduction of about 47%. At the same time, while we managed to reduce inventory, we also increased the availability of equipment by about 29%. So there was a full rebalancing of the inventory we had, while also managing to optimize it at the same time. Very related, obviously, to the poll, to create real step change, which is what we needed to do in the business here, we realized that there would need to be 3 core pillars that we would have to focus on: people, processes, and technologies. And over here on the right are all of the various initiatives that we ran together to help us basically achieve this target we were looking for and complete the working capital journey. We will go through all of these initiatives in detail as we go here, though the key thing that we need to start off with is the case for change. Why did we decide to undertake this initiative, and how did we calculate what the end goal was and what we needed to do? So I will now jump into the case for change. So, the why. Karen has obviously mentioned a few of these points, but obviously we started with once we consolidated all of our inventory from the different provinces in 2017, we finally had a central view. The value was very high. What really was another issue that we noticed is there was significant aging. So with respect to network inventory, and as Karen mentioned, network inventory is antennas, radios, transmission equipment, batteries that all used to run cell phone towers. So any equipment that effectively sits in the warehouse for over 6 months is deemed aged. And we got to a stage where we had 50% of our inventory being aged. So we knew there was a problem there. Thirdly and finally, we didn't know what the exact target of our inventory level was. With all this consolidation happening, we didn't actually understand what good was, where we needed to be, and also what the aging profile needed to look like. Karen's explained a couple of the complexities in matching supply and demand and why we got there, but I think it's good to reiterate some of the points. So obviously, over the last 20 or so years, there's been significant changes in cell phone technology. So from 2G to 3G to 4G, now to 5G, with various iterations in between. Obviously, equipment becomes obsolete, and basically all of this results in a very, very different demand pattern to what you would see in FMCG, for example. A slight added complexity is all of these cell phone towers across the country were built over 20 years and all have different fundamental designs. So a tower that is built in an open plot versus a tower that is built on top of a building in the middle of Sandton, they have different design components due to where they need to fit. So upgrading 2 towers from one technology to the next technology, they won't need the same equipment. So this obviously added an extra complexity. So we needed to figure out how we're going to determine what is the target line. Where do we need to get? What is the opportunity for improvement here? So as mentioned, historical demand wasn't going to help us much due to the completely different demand patterns that we saw and being very project-based, but it was somewhere to start. So we took our historical demand and developed algorithms against it, where we tried to link different technology types and historical performance of different, it's called technology evolutions, to see if we could predict future demand. So we developed algorithms, then we ran a scenario and saw how accurate we were we generally ran scenarios over 3 to 4 weeks. So how accurate we were, tweaked the algorithms again, and then reran the scenarios. We eventually got to a stage where we believed that we could, to about 85%, predict the future demand of network equipment. So with being able to predict this, we added on safety factors, and we got to the stage where we could determine what we thought our optimal inventory holding should be. So that takes us to our outputs here. So what we calculated was there was an opportunity to reduce inventory by about 37%, and at the same time increase availability of equipment. So we saw that there were certain materials that were understocked that needed slightly more, so effectively rebalancing of the inventory. So obviously we outshot this 37% number. We got to 47. The main reason for that is we added in quite big safety factors, as this was a very new initiative, and we didn't want to, through trying to be too lean initially, hinder the upgrade of technologies. A very key finding for us during all of this was the fact that at any given time, generally about 4,000 different material types, or SKUs, if you want to call them, are in the warehouses any time. So to look at a list of 4,000 and figure out where to start is always a bit tricky. When you know for every material, effectively, you need to match the demand and supply and get rid of any obsolete or excess inventory. So we turned to the Pareto principle, where basically we found out that by looking at just the 30 biggest issued materials or excess materials, we could tackle 50% of the inventory problem. So this was massive for us because it gave us a real focus on 30 materials that we can really drive against and would move the needle immediately. At the same time, while moving the needle, it was a cross-functional team, so from 3 different departments all working together. So intrinsically, really was great to see the needle move in the right direction. And at the same time, while showing that we can deliver to the business, we were implementing a lot of the other fundamentals, which we will talk about going forward, to ensure that this was sustainable, and then we could tackle the rest of the savings opportunity on it's called the 20 side of the Pareto principle. And then we'll talk about the Pareto principle a couple of times as we go through, but it linked very well to our focused improvements and focused drive across this journey. So now we got to the stage where we could make the business aware of the financial impact that this could have if we capture this opportunity. Now it was getting the business and 3 different departments aligned on how we tackle this journey, which takes us down to top-down alignments. And I'm going to hand over to Karen for this.
Thanks, John. And I'm back on camera. Apparently I wasn't on camera in the beginning. Of course, there would be gremlins creeping in.
Good to have you back.
We initially spent quite a lot of time trying to fix the problem from the ground up. This was ineffective and slow due to the silos that exist in the various departments of the business. Misaligned targets and an overall lack of support and understanding of what we were trying to solve for just didn't help our case. Because this wasn't something that other departments were measured on, and it had been invisible for so long, the buy-in just wasn't there. A big step change in our progress came from approaching the problem by aligning senior management around the problem, or what we then like to call the top-down approach. After we pitched the case for change that John spoke of to our CFO and got alignment on the problem at hand, the inventory steerco was formed. This was a governance forum that combined 3 different departments around a virtual table: technology, finance, and SCM. During these steercos, the misaligned targets were aligned, the progress was fast-tracked, and there were lots of support for reaching the targets that were set. The accountability that came from these steercos made a world of difference. The inventory steerco by itself also wouldn't have worked in isolation. To ensure we had progress to report on, there were forums created that enabled the collaboration between teams. The working sessions enabled discussions, decisions, and actions. In these working sessions, away from the limelight, we could get into the nitty-gritty of details, ask each other difficult questions, and argue various viewpoints. After these working sessions, however, we'd again report back to the steerco forum on the successes achieved or setbacks experienced. Put in another way, utilizing a top-down approach allowed us to focus on the company targets and not squabble around our own departmental KPIs. Essentially, we were all aligned to the same company goal. Now that we had the top-down alignment from the people side of things, John, if you can maybe just go to the home slide. We had to work on the technology and tools we needed to support us. Next, I'll talk about the fundamentals that were required as the base we needed for all the tools we built on top of this base to assist us in our journey. There is a saying that goes, "The search for the scapegoat is the easiest of all hunting expeditions." When uncomfortable numbers are shown, one can expect there to be some pushback. For the numbers to stand up to the firing squad, the fundamentals had to be rock solid. It was imperative that the data and the stock accuracy could stand up to constant scrutiny and interrogation. Without the fundamentals of data accuracy, the rest of our initiatives would not have been possible. The warehouse personnel embraced the challenge and with the right accountability drove the accuracy to world class. One of our fundamentals that most of our reputation was built on is data-driven decision making. And we prided ourselves that our decisions and views were based on the data. No longer were there generalizations made and accountability easily diverted. It was all there in the data. If, for instance, it was unclear who purchased the equipment, we could provide the answers. And because the data was accurate, the search for the scapegoat called data inaccuracy was called off. Once even the worst of disbelievers were converted, we needed to be able to provide consistent, clear, and compelling views to ensure that the right decisions could be taken time and time again. The importance of consistent views were that the stakeholders got used to the same views, they knew how to get to the answers they were looking for, and the whole business recognized this one source of the truth. John will now take you through some of the details of the dashboards and how we implemented them.
Thank you, Karen. So yes, on our technologies and tools journey, from the fundamentals in place, we were now in the position to launch our data dashboards and our bots. So Karen's already used the phrase, but data-driven decision making. So this really was one of the backbones of the journey that we've undertaken, and it made the path going forward incredibly clear because we just followed the numbers the whole time. So with this good data being created through good processes and people in the right places, and obviously the new structure of bringing everything centralized, we could create views which we always ensured were custom developed for the various stakeholders, so the different departments all working on this together. So ensuring views were custom built for the end user, that it provided all the information they want. They were even involved in the design of the final look and feel. Really, on the change management front, helped us with the user acceptance and the buy-in of people actually using the dashboards to their advantage to push them in the right direction. What all these data dashboards also gave us is the real platform for driving focused improvements. So very much what I spoke about the Pareto earlier, you could see where the real opportunities were to focus on initially, which focus areas are really going to move the needle. Then also the tracking of progress, trends. For a cross-functional team, 3 different departments working together, with all of the effort goes in to be able to see that the numbers are moving in the right direction. Intrinsically, it's brilliant for a team and drives kind of a culture of continuous improvement. So having trends there really, really makes a massive difference. On the same front, when the numbers start heading in the wrong direction, it's very easy and clear to identify the issues. Obviously, with data being live, straight away you can see when your trends are heading in the wrong direction. What we also ensured with the way we created views is we created accountability, where we sliced and diced the data and the views to ensure that you could see just whether it's one classification of material, one supplier, one warehouse. You could dive into just that one view to see how performance is going, and whether or not it's trending in the right direction, which then shows exactly which person needs support or needs guidance in moving the needle in the right direction again. I'm going to take you high level through how we develop these dashboards. So we, as Karen's mentioned, we brought everything centralized, had the centralized warehouse management system and an ERP, though with any big company, there were other data sources as well. So we had multiple data sources. We had a bot daily pulling from the multiple sources and uploading into a cloud-based data warehouse. From there, we performed our data transforms to get all the data in the tables that we required. And from there, we could build our custom BI views. So all of these dashboards, as I said, that we really put a lot of effort into developing them specifically for the end user. They were all accessible on a central SharePoint, so everyone was able to get to them. And what Karen also mentioned previously, there was one consistent view that people could use all of the time, which really helped us with the traction. There were still, as always will happen, requests for Excel sheets. So just to kind of at least ensure they're always from the one source of the truth, we had them where they could be refreshed and downloaded off the portal as well. We also found a couple of opportunities where the warehouse management system and our ERP had gaps. For example, which Karen mentioned earlier, you could procure a material even though we deemed it had sufficient or excess inventory. So what we did eventually is we wrote a bot that as soon as the purchase order process started on a material that we deemed was either excess or had sufficient inventory already, the bot would escalate the process to either get the purchase order cancelled, delayed, or cancelled, delayed effectively. So all of this resulted in the impact of what I've kind of spoken about high level already: accountability, early warning signs, being able to action immediately, being able to see the SLA adherence and how the operations are embracing this new way of work, consistency in views, as we've mentioned already, and then the fact that there's one source of the truth takes away a lot of the data integrity questions. With our data dashboards developed, we needed to, with the complexity of the matching demand and supply, we needed a planning solution, which brings us to the custom designed MRP that we developed. So an MRP obviously is material requirements planning. And the goal of the MRP is basically to ensure that we have the right equipment in the right time, at the right place in the right time, which requires placing the correct POs at the right time and also moving equipment to the applicable provinces as the demand will require. The way we developed this MRP actually comes from everything I spoke about in the case for change, where we developed specific algorithms to predict demand going forward. So we used historical demand plus our algorithms, which effectively pushed out a bill of materials for whatever the project was. And in this case, a project is a technology upgrade. Then incorporating lead times and safety factors, as well as the inputs of how many sites need to be upgraded. The output we got of this was a recommended purchase order and how we need to move inventory within the country. All of this back end was, the front end of it was a dashboard. I've got a little screenshot of it below where you select your target, which province you're looking at, what the project is, and basically the output for you, what materials are all good, where you may be running low, and where you need to move from another region or you need to procure. So this is the technology I've spoken about. Though, as the theme of this entire presentation, having processes and the right people in place was huge. So again, this ran across all three departments. Amongst the three departments, we developed the process maps together, agreed on the RACI charts, and effectively launched the process of weekly cadence planning meetings where we use this technology, the MRP, with the inputs from the various departments, and effectively the outputs of every session is what the POs need to be for this week, what they need to look like, and what material moves need to happen within the country. With the planning solution ticked off, we noticed that there was another opportunity for improvements in that we didn't have great visibility of what we were inbounding. So Karen's going to go through the inbound control tower with you.
Thanks, John. After making great progress to move the inventory numbers in the right direction, we started looking outside of our immediate environment and put together the views of the equipment that was en route to our warehouses. ready to flood our warehouses were the orders that were placed before we had laid the fundamentals of the new frugal philosophies that we were coaching into the business. All these orders, had it come in at the same time, would have erased our progress. As per usual, though, we could make use of trusty Pareto principles and focus on 4 suppliers that held most of the value of the equipment on its way. With those 4 suppliers, we focused on ensuring we get consistent data from the vendors to understand where in the supply chain our equipment was. And once that was established and could be replicated reliably, we formed the virtual control tower. The virtual control tower met in a weekly cadence meeting that combined technology, SCM, and the suppliers to ensure the right decisions were made as a combined team. In these cadence meetings, the cross-functional team agreed on equipment delivery timelines, using the views that we've built around our inventory. We were empowered to have difficult conversations about which items should inbound into our warehouse and which shouldn't, as the data could clearly show us which equipment items would be depleted and which equipment items would be in excess. This was a fundamentally different way of operating. Before, any delivery would be allowed, regardless of whether the item was needed or not. Also worth noting is that no decisions made in the cadence meetings have hindered our technology colleagues to build the network, to reach their targets. In actual case, our fill rate went up. Moving closer to the suppliers also highlighted some of the lack of previous controls in deliveries. Suppliers would partially deliver equipment that the technology teams couldn't deploy as it wasn't full kits. That delayed rollout, filled up our warehouses, and consumed our working capital prematurely. The cadence sessions were tough. Difficult decisions had to be made. In my opinion, though, the cadence calls of the inbound control tower was maybe the tip of that elusive silver bullet. John will now go over the operating model that we designed for enabling continued success.
Thank you, Karen. So we had all of these initiatives. We had aligned the people. We had developed these various technologies. We needed to tie everything together now to work sustainably to ensure that we got this trend in the right direction. So this takes us to the operating model for success we developed. So the key thing here is, as I said, tying together the technologies, the people, and the process. So we had 3 key, let's call them sessions or meetings that were, once again, we use the word backbone, but backbone of this journey. So the supplier cadence meetings, which Karen has obviously discussed, basically key stakeholders in there, having the suppliers, having the various business units, and then using all the information from the inbound control tower to basically see where in the value chain the materials are and see whether or not something needs to be sped up or slowed down based on, and basically also with that visibility there, the rest of the business, so getting the towers ready, can then plan to ensure that they have everything ready as soon as the equipment can be inbounded. So it's effectively protecting the end of our warehouses and really ensuring that it's demand-driven inbounding. So we're only really letting something come into our system when we know that there's going to be not necessarily an immediate demand for it, but within at least the next 2 months, let's say. We also use these forums to hold our suppliers accountable to ensure that they're delivered for POs. Our bi-weekly working sessions. So this was the cross-functional, bringing all the teams together to use the dashboards to focus on where the opportunities for improvements are. Lots of hard work, lots of debating, but the key principle of it was data-driven and action-orientated. So actions always came out of it, and we always stuck to those actions, which we then reported on in the next session. So here we drove pushing out aged equipment that we believe could possibly be used for other projects in other provinces. Then the top layer of our operating model was reporting to our sponsors, the CFO and the CTO, as well as the head of department. So giving feedback on the progress made, seeing if there's any recommendations, And then a key thing, what this also allowed for is just to recalibrate everyone that this is why we're here. This is the objective. We're 3 different departments working together, but we're here to optimize inventory level while increasing availability. So aligning the teams, and then whenever executive support was required, if a certain supplier is not giving us the inbound information that we need or not attending the cadence meetings, the executive support we got was brilliant. With all of this developed and basically helping us achieve this number over here, we've got our inventory very close to what we believe is the right number. But now we need to ensure this is sustainable and operationalized into the business. Karen going to take us through the sustainability in the BAU.
Thanks, John. After the journey we went on to halve our working capital and significantly reduced age equipment, we would hate for it to regress. We wanted to ensure that there was absolutely no steps taken backward. To ensure we stay the course, this very simple 3-step model is being followed. Continuous monitoring and reporting of KPIs, forums to reflect and plan when these KPIs move out of bounds, and taking the necessary actions to correct. It is also quite important for us to continue to operationalize all the pieces to the solution into the business to ensure it is part of business as usual. Across everything we did was change management that took us from the way we used to operate to how we operate today. And that change management is crucial to ensure we do not slip back into old habits. The KPIs also had to be embedded cross-functionally and couldn't be the responsibility of only one department. Fail-safes to ensure that adherence happened in a more automated way were also introduced. As John explained earlier, fail-safes were built into our ERP to ensure we do not order already problematic items. I think rarely in life will one find a silver bullet for a problem as complex and multidisciplinary as this one. Rather, the answer is made up of multiple pieces that include hard work, clever thinking, data-driven decision-making, and persistence. Colin Powell, the former Secretary of State for the US, said it well. A dream doesn't become reality through magic. It takes sweat, determination, and hard work. John and I would like to thank you for your time today and listening to the journey that we've taken in the past year. The floor is now open for any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, John and Karen. Karen, that was very enlightening and a great presentation showcasing fabulous partnership and fascinating case study. Thanks very much. We have 2 questions from Eric Warner. I see you custom built MRP. Did you consider using DDMRP?
Yeah, let me jump in there. So a lot of the fundamentals of how we built our MRP was used or borrowed learnings from DDMRP. So absolutely, yes.
Great. And Eric has another question. Re-tower design, was there no chance for some degree of standardization, thus already reducing stock complexity?
I imagine he's talking about whether it's pulling in a freight forwarder to support us on there, but the gist is, unfortunately, Incoterms were not in our favor. So getting standardized information from our suppliers to create the inbound aspect of the control tower was very difficult. So it was a lot of working and negotiating with suppliers. With respect to the rest of the control tower, we're managing demand and within the country, once we had the central ERP, we were able to standardize.
And Nessie maybe meant the bills of materials, John, in which case it is quite variable and site specific. So one of the reasons why it's not as easy to predict what equipment will be needed is because of the complexities of the different sites and the configurations at those sites. And thus the components that make up the build of that site is also quite variable.
Thanks, Karen.
Thanks, Karen. Two more quick questions if you've got time. You mentioned the development of algorithms. Could you elaborate on the type of algorithms that you considered? For example, deterministic, probabilistic, or stochastic models? Good heavens. Thanks, Karen.
Probabilistic in that what we had to do is effectively match where we saw in a certain region where we moved from 2G to 3G, the different material classifications within that, so radios, antennas, cables, how that forecast moved with the next generation in a similar province. So a lot of trial and error. But yes, I hope that answers the question. I can't go into too many details, obviously.
So maybe to just add to that, so a province, but also project specific. So there are different types of upgrades or builds that could happen at a site. And that was also definitely part of the input into the calculations or the algorithms.
Excellent. Elsa has a question. Have you integrated with your freight forwarder to get level updates?
Sorry,
with order level updates. Sorry about that. Have you integrated with your freight forwarder to get order level updates?
Should I go, Karen?
You can. It's
Again, Incoterms, we actually have so all of our different suppliers use different freight forwarders coming in. So a lot of the work has been getting the information from all of them, getting that data, pulling into one central view, transforming, and then pulling it back ourselves. So the way Incoterms work for us, we couldn't just get that information, unfortunately.
Yeah, we had to get that information via the suppliers. And it took quite some time to get it up and running and to get it consistently. But once we had those views, we could implement the control tower, and the effects from implementing that control tower was really significant.
Excellent. Fascinating case study. Thank you so much for highlighting that and showing us all the intricacies of that. Amazing. Please, would everybody who's still online just fill in the poll of the feedback of the session if you can do that. And yes. I think you saw the poll results.
No, we actually haven't. So what's the results?
49% people, 29% processes, and 23% technology.
Okay.
Good choice.
We probably aligned with that, yes.
Oh, that's great. They're awesome. And thanks everybody for your questions and your interactions. And I'm sure that Karen and John wouldn't mind chatting to you afterwards, perhaps on a lounge table before the next session starts, if you want to ask another further questions. Thanks everybody. Thanks for joining. See you at the next sessions.
Thanks so much.